Hi, it's Suey. I decided I would come down here and sit in front of my YA section for some YA videos that I would like to film. The first one I'm doing today is my 5 favorite YA books. You and I both know that there's probably no way I'm going to be able to keep this to just 5 favorites. But I did try to make a list, and what I decided to do is maybe break them up into some categories. Well, maybe 2 categories. I could go on all the categories, but I'm trying really hard to keep this to just 5 favorites. So I find myself over and over again recommending certain books. You guys all know that my favorite book of all time is, well, I didn't even grab it yet, is The Book Thief by Markus Zusak. I'm assuming that most people have read it. This is why I don't really talk about what it's about that much, because I'm just assuming everyone's read it. But just in case you haven't, and you are like wanting to know why I talk about this one so much, this one is about a girl's experience living in Germany during World War II. So it's her experience with Nazi Germany. She's a German girl, yeah. And so she has to deal with the Hitler Youth program, and she has to deal with watching piles of books be burned. And she is the book thief because she rescues some books from those piles. Also, she steals books from the house that she kind of works at, a rich people house, even though she's not really stealing, but you know, it seems like she might be stealing and she might get in trouble for it. And her family hides a Jewish guy. And so it's her perspective as a German girl living in Nazi Germany about all the events that we learn about like that. So it's really strange because, you know, most of us, I think, feel like we're on the other side. We are rooting against Nazi Germany. You know, she's living there and she's dealing with bombings and things like that. And so it's like weird to feel like that the people that are bombing her are the enemy, but when it's really like our countries, my country, bombing her. So it makes you think of the war in a whole different perspective. The whole thing is narrated by Death, and I've heard Markus Zusak talk many times, and he says that he struggled with his book, and until he realized that Death needed to be the narrator, that's when it flipped over and became the wonderful book it is today. It talks so much about the power of words, the power of friendship and family, and the power of just people in general. And I think this is the last line, is one of my all-time favorite lines. The last line in the book. A last note from your narrator. I am haunted by humans. One of my favorite lines of all time. In fact, I put it on a t-shirt and wore it to Markus Zusak events, which caught his attention and became one of my favorite bookish moments of all time. Death talks about going around and gathering up all of the souls that are dying and coming to him because of what's going on. And so that's why he feels like he's haunted by humans and their colors and their auras. And it's just so powerful. So powerful. And the way Markus Zusak words things and writes is like so hard hitting that I just love it so much. So that is always my number 1 recommendation for all books, but it happens to be in the YA category. Let's see, I always suggest these 2 books as favorite YA books. I'm going to talk about them together because sometimes they're very similar in feel, dystopian, science fiction, fantasy kind of speculative sort of books. This one is more science fiction. They're on a spaceship and they crash land on this planet, and all these crazy things are happening on the planet, and our girl is like this highfalutin princess kind of girl, and our guy is sort of like the captain of the guard, but he comes from, you know, lower class kind of family, and he thinks she is just too arrogant for his taste, and they clash right off the bat, of course, but they have to survive together now because of the crash, and find out that they are extremely well suited to each other. And so it's their survival story on the planet after they crash, and then all of the weird things that they discover there. This one is a more dystopian in feel. Our girl is living in this bubble society where they literally have glass bubbles surrounding them, and they have been told that the outside air is toxic. But then she ends up outside for some reason. Now I can't remember exactly why she ends up outside. And she finds out that you can actually live outside, and that there are people living out there, and that she ends up making friends with them and learning that they are like normal, nice people, whereas she's been taught that they are savages, basically. And she connects with a guy in one of these groups, and then it's almost a sort of a survival story there too, and kind of an awakening of what's really going on. Oh my gosh, it's so good, so good. What else do I always talk about? Maggie Stiefvatter. Anyway, I say Stiefvatter. She's written the Raven Boy trilogy or series, which I really, really enjoy. But this is a standalone called The Scorpio Races. It has nothing to do with that trilogy. That when I read it, it was sort of slowish and I sort of didn't quite get it. But after I read it, when I thought back on it, I was like, man, that was one of the best books I've ever read. It's sort of this slow burn, deep, profound, beautifully written, so much to think about kind of story. These horses come ashore, and it's sort of a dystopian society too. I feel like it sort of feels fantasy-ish, like medieval-ish kind of, more rugged culture. But these are like wild horses that come up out of the sea every year, and then people they don't tame them, but they capture them and train them to run in these races. And our girl and our guy, it's an intense relationship, but they are competing against each other. But they both need to win because you get, they need to survive. And so whatever you win, it helps you get stuff that helps you survive in this harsh society. That's what I remember from it anyway. But like I said, it's just so beautifully written. And so, I don't know. This is one of those books I just really need to reread after having the perspective I have on it now, because like I said, when I read it, I don't think I appreciated it enough. How many have I done? 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, I think I have 6 books on my list here. Six of Crows is another one I really like to recommend to people. Leigh Bardugo. Doesn't she write some adult ones lately that people are loving so much? She started out with Shadow and Bone and the trilogy for that, and then Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom, which is a different duology, but in the same world as the Shadow of Bones. Okay, Shadow and Bone. But Six of Crows, so good. It's about this group of kids who all have these different strengths, and they play off of each other to be kind of this gang, and the romance in it is really intense, but it's not like, it's just so subtle, intense and subtle at the same time. And they have this mission that they have to do, and it's just so full of adventure and edge of your seat stuff that is going on, and the characters are just the best ever. I don't know, I just love this kind of stuff so much more than the romantasy that's so popular today. I mean, I guess this could be considered romantasy, but this, was happening way before the romantasy that's so popular today. But when was this published? But it's that kind of book, and I just love it so much more when it's a little more subtle, but still so intense. 2015 was when this one was published. So, okay. And one more that I sometimes forget about this book, and then when I remember, I'm like, why don't I talk about it more? Because I think this is the one that flies under the radar, and that probably most of you have never heard of. Eliza and Her Monsters by Francesca Zappia. Let me know if you've read this book. This was one of my favorite books I read back in the day, about a girl who is a webtoon artist. She's very, very popular online, but she's kind of reclusive in real life. And then she makes friends with this guy who ends up being the leader of her fan club online. But she doesn't tell him who she is, but they become friends in real life. And then she has this dilemma of, is she ever going to tell him who she really is? And so that's sort of the premise of the whole thing, but the underlying story is tons of things about emotional and mental illness and dealing with trauma and parent-child relationships and suicidal thoughts, all those kinds of intense, deep, dark subjects with this underlying fun, sort of cute YA romance premise. So the two connect together in like this amazing way. So I don't know, I just really, really liked it. And I remember when I read this the first time, I've read this one a couple times, and when I read it the first time, I could not put it down. So good. So that's sort of my more obscure book recommendation, favorite, yeah. In another video, I'm going to go through my shelves and maybe talk about some award-winning books that I can find on my shelves. The Book Thief, as you will see, is a Printz Honor Award. I'm going to talk about the Print Awards a little bit more in that video. But yeah, maybe we'll find some more on my shelf that fit in that category. But I wanted to also mention that there are some other books that we don't always think of as YA. Those are the classic books that nowadays they would probably be considered YA. For instance, Ender's Game. Now I know this one you might not quite consider a classic yet, but it was published in 1977. So if you use my scale of 50 years or older, this one is just about there, only 2 years shy. But I feel like this is definitely going to go down as a classic YA book. This is a story about a young kid who ends up getting recruited to learn how to fight in space. He's learning how to play video games, but there's some underlying reason for what he's learning how to do. And it's very crazy, very crazy. Some other books that are more traditionally considered classic that I would think of as YA if they were being marketed today are books like Anne of Green Gables, one of my all-time favorites, by L.M. Montgomery, Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. I don't think I have a copy of the Outsiders by S.E. Hinton. And then I just stumbled upon Wilson Rawls. He wrote a bunch that could be considered YA these days. But of course, the best one is Where the Red Fern Grows. That copy is upstairs. I'm not going to go run and get it right now. So those are some other favorite books that I would kind of put into a more classical category. Then these others are my more recent favorites, even though they are favorites from quite a few years ago. There you have it, what I would consider my all-time favorite YA books. That's just, seriously though, the tip of the iceberg with some of my favorites. So if you're pinning me down and making me just say a few, those are the ones that are coming to mind right now. And it pains my heart to not discuss all the other ones, but maybe in the other video when I go through and talk about award-winning YA books, we'll talk about some more of those. So look for that. So until then, happy reading and happy August. For sure, I hope you're joining in the fun of promoting and reading and highlighting YA books with us. Bye.